Welcome to Motherhood and ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sen. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, successful mama. It's your friend Patricia. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I so appreciate you giving me some of your precious moments. So, I love to pop into different Facebook groups and just keep a pulse on what's going on with the ADHD community. And 50% of me wants to help all the mamas, and then the other 50% of me gets so mad at people's ridiculousness. And I was telling a friend about this post I was reading in a mom's group about how this mom's talking about her ADHD son and how he keeps barging into the room without knocking. And she's explaining how it's frustrating. She'll be sleeping, and then he just barges into the room and wakes her up, and it'll be about something really goofy like he died in his video game, which obviously to us is goofy, to him was quite the disaster. Then you get like all these useless comments people post like, why are you napping so much? And then he's like, I'm not napping. I'm not being a worthless parent here. Like, that's not the point of this discussion. Or they're getting on their high horse about how I don't let my child play video games. And it's like, that's not the point of what this mom is trying to illustrate. She's using that as an example, but the skill she is trying to implement in her child is learning to knock before entering and having that pause before acting, which is really hard when you have attention deficit disorder. And I was laughing really hard because then somebody posted the suggestion of, well, why don't you write down a paragraph of like, well, if you come in here, here's what your consequence is going to be. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there is no ADHD child who's going to stop and read an essay before they knock on a door. They're just going to barge in and ignore the paper. Like, let's be honest here. I had commented, well, he's probably not going to read the essay, so why don't you just put whatever the consequence is really big on a piece of paper and just stick that on the door. So when he goes up and he sees, for example, if you're going to take away his Xbox, he sees the picture of the Xbox and that one thing is going to catch his attention. He's not going to stop and read a novel. And so I was telling my counselor friend, Carolyn, about this and lamenting about how even for me as an adult, I'm trying to increase my life skills and it's hard for me. I start beating myself up for not getting it right away. And she gave me the best analogy that she uses with parents is that you have to look at teaching these skills, whether it's for yourself or when you're teaching your kids, is you have to look at it like potty training. It's not an overnight success. And I was just like, oh, so good. Because here's the thing, you can teach your kid to use the potty in 3 days, which, as a side note, I love Laura Jensen's 3-day method. It's not your traditional no pants method, but it is a 3-day method. So I really liked it if you are in that potty training mode. But anyway, if you think about potty training, it's like you teach them how to use the potty. For how many years are you saying, tell me when you have to go potty? Everyone, let's go potty before we get in the car. Or you see like those dancing around kids doing the potty dance, even when they're like 6 or 7. How many years have I been wiping butts? Like, even though my son was potty trained at 2.5 and he's now 4.5, like, I'm still helping him wipe his butt. I thought we'd be past that at this point. I mean, I guess technically we've moved on to like him wiping and me checking, but still, it's like, I'm still having to like enter the bathroom and verify things. And I thought that 2 years later we would be done this, but here we are. We're still working on the potty training skill. And when we're potty training, like, we know when we get it wrong because the poo-poo tells us that there was a problem and an error happened and that things didn't stick. So we were very motivated to stick with it because we were trying to limit the amount of poo-poo we are cleaning out of things. But how do we channel that level of motivation, the poo-poo level of motivation, into the other things that we're doing? We have to be proactive and not reactive. When you're doing the potty training, like, packing an extra set of clothes is key. That's going to save you a lot of stress because you know the accident is going to happen. You have a plan set out when you exit the house of being ready to tackle the hurdles that you know you're going to run into. And as you tailor it to either if you're teaching the skill to your kid or you're doing it within yourself, if you have tailored that plan, that's going to lead you towards success. And in that plan, you're breaking it down into pieces You know your kid's going to have to go to the potty. Where's the nearest potty? You've thought about all those things. Like, how are you going to deal with the hurdles? You know that failure is going to happen. You're going to have accidents. If you've prepared ahead of time, it's way less stressful. You know they're coming, because that's the thing, is they're coming either way, whether you're prepared or not. But if you're prepared, you're not as stressed and you know how you're going to deal with them. If you've been following me on Instagram, you know I've been doing yoga for the first time this month. And one thing I loved in all my classes, the yoga teachers are constantly saying, like, hey, if you fall over, that's good. That means that you're pushing yourself. You are trying something new. You're not staying stagnant. So they actually encourage failure. They encourage the falling over, which is really nice because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm constantly tipping over. If you're pushing yourself, then things are going to fall. If you're pushing your kid to try something new, they are going to fall. They're going to make mistakes. So if we have that patience in knowing that the failure is going to happen and we have a plan for it, we'll be less stressed. And for me, the biggest thing is just focusing on my mindset. You know, I love the word mindset. It's a big thing for me. My mindset of patience, because one of the hardest parts for me in being a mom is my emotional regulation, because kids can frustrate you so quickly and so easily. It's like, how many times have I told you to blah, blah, blah. Like, there's always going to be that. So to have a plan in place allows me to be more patient and loving with them. Because when I am stressed, my patience literally drops to like level 0. And I don't like how I am in that mode. I know that it's more about my poor mindset than their poor choices. And lastly, we have to have a plan for celebrating those successes. You know, when you start potty training your kid, you have like a potty chart where they get stickers, or you give them an M&M every time they go poo-poo in the potty. Like, they're getting this constant reinforcement of positivity, of encouragement, of kind words, of excitement. Like, that moment you start jumping up and down with your kid and being like, you went poo-poo on the potty, and that celebration you have, that is so important for our kids and for us, just humans in general, to have that positivity, because it's going to do so much for your self-esteem and your motivation going forward. I was recently reading both a book by Dr. Hollowell and a book by Dr. Amen, and I can't remember which one was writing this in the book, which is One of the Curses of ADHD. I think it was Dr. Amen's book. But he was saying about how he was at either an aquarium or a zoo, and he's watching the show where the trainer asked the penguin to do stuff, and then the penguin would do everything the trainer asked of him. And he's sitting here going, why can this penguin go get the blah, blah, blah every time, and yet I can't get my teenager to follow what I ask of him, you know, and clearly my kid is smarter than a penguin. What's the deal? So he was chatting with the trainer afterwards. And the trainer said, well, unlike parents, every time the penguin does what I ask of him, I give him a fish. And he knows he's going to get that positive reinforcement every time. But kids don't get that. And we as humans do great with positive reinforcement. So we can't just have the plan for, okay, what are we going to do when this fails? But we need to have that plan for, what are we going to do to mark the successes that our kids have, or that we have when we're building that new skill? Knowing that even though it's taking us maybe months or years to get that skill, we still need to celebrate those wins. And so what's that going to look like as well? So mama, homework is think about a goal, no matter how large or how tiny, that either you or one of your kids are working on. And break it down into your steps. What's your plan going to be to achieve that? How are you going to teach it for the 400th time when you're frustrated and getting impatient? How are you going to react when failure strikes? How are you going to celebrate the wins and the successes when things are going well? And then remind yourself of that potty training mentality as you're in the thick of it, and be really glad that you're not cleaning up poop. All right, successful mama, you have a superbly beautiful week, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Motherhood and ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodandadhd.com.